Hello, welcome to Books and Brews,
the place where beer and literature meet.
With your host, certified cicerone Michael Agnew.
And Laura Mosica, author of the Bluebells Chronicles.
Each month we invite a guest author to read their words and talk about writing while sipping beers specially paired with their work.
This month's guest is Toussaint Morrison.
So sit back,
pop a cold one,
and dive into some books
and brews. So, here we are. Welcome to Books and Brews.
It's good to
Yeah.
be back. Welcome Toussaint and Michael. How has your month been?
My month has been great.
Yeah.
Weather's great again. Got
Better
an
than it
opportunity
was.
to go
Yep.
out foraging.
Mm-hmm. Tell
First
me
time this
about
spring.
foraging.
What is foraging?
Basically,
exactly?
you wander in the woods looking for mushrooms and other edibles.
Oh my god!
So
And
I went out
something
to my girlfriend lives in Menominee, so there's a place out in Menominee. It's like a forest preserve, and we went trouncing through the woods looking for ramps, particularly. Which, if you don't know what ramps are, they're like a delicious wild leek kind of thing.
And I need to get some of those from you, or give you my recipe for Sorsh's stew that's in my book Food Feast.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I love the leeks I got at the store. I'd be interested to try it with your ramps.
But so we wander around. We're looking for these ramps. We go all over off trail. Didn't find any. Finally, we're just walking out, and there's this tree where we found a bunch of crazy mushrooms last year. And we're walking past that same tree, and right there on the side of the trail, it's like, whoa, this huge pile of ramps.
Oh wow!
So we dug a bunch of those. We found some fiddlehead ferns. Those are delicious and edible. I went out yesterday down by the river, found a bunch of pheasant-back mushrooms. So.
And so you like to cook. Did you do a lot of cooking with those already?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, last night I sauteed up some ramps, fiddleheads, and pheasant-backs.
You're making me hungry now.
I can't believe this is like an actual thing.
It is an actual
this
thing.
feels like a part of like a Zelda video game. You just go out foraging for food.
Yeah, no, it's so much fun.
Thinking, my plans are almost the complete opposite. I'm deciding today whether to buy plane tickets to Hawaii. So my son is down there. He's at Marine Boot Camp, Marine Camp. And I've never been to Hawaii, so I'm thinking of going and finally taking a break instead of working 6 days a week like I normally do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Whatever you do, just don't touch the turtles.
don't
'Cause
touch the turtles.
apparently, like it's against the law to
Is
like.
it really?
Yeah. Because they got to preserve, the wildlife there, and like if people go there like grabbing turtles and taking pictures with it, then it screws up.
I'm going.
Oh, it's like the people who lift dolphins out of the water.
Yeah, God.
Well, give him credit for being strong, at least. Man, I'm going with my camera. So,
What are your only hesitations to going to Hawaii?
my hesitation is that I just paid $900 to make sure my car keeps running.
That is a hesitation.
I was gung ho to go until
Okay,
that happened.
okay.
So have to look at the numbers.
I see.
So, Laura, what is your book of the month
My
this month?
book of the month. Well, I read bits and pieces these days, so I picked up a book at Half Price Books, shameless plug there, called Pilgrimage to Iona, because I've been to Iona twice. I hope to go again. And it's a very fascinating book, a very different look at potential world history than anything you've ever learned in school. Not convinced I agree with it, but it's definitely interesting reading, claiming that Iona was once the mountain of the gods, and not quite what I expected, but I'll keep reading. And then I've been working through a book called What If, edited by Robert Cowley, with essays by James Bradley, Cal Carr, Thomas Fleming, John Lucas, Jeffrey Ward, and others.
And others.
And others. I guess they weren't as important. So I have sort of skimmed through what if Jesus wasn't crucified? How would history be different? And what if Harold Godwinson had won at Hastings in 1066? And I've gotten more into the question of what happened at Hastings. Again, not sure I agree with their conclusions, but it's very interesting reading to see all the things that changed because of that victory.
Where is Iona?
Iona is off the coast of Scotland.
Okay.
And it's a place that's reputed to be a thin place where mysterious things happen. And so she ties that into this idea that there's a mystic there who says this was the Mount of the Gods you read about in Greek history.
Wow.
Or Greek myth, I should say.
Okay.
As I said, not convinced I agree with that, but it's a very interesting book to read all the same.
You ever been to some thin places where like the energy is definitely...
I walked into the middle of some standing stones.
Okay.
One of the times I was in Scotland, and it was very odd. I felt this pressure on my chest as if a force was pushing me away.
Wow.
And I did not expect that.
Huh.
Yes, it was, I'm not going to say disturbing, surprising.
Yeah.
My read of the month is a book from a writer who's become an absolute favorite of mine, an Italian writer named Italo Calvino. This book is If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. It is a novel about reading. It is a novel that consists of a series of unfinished novels.
Great.
So you start into these novels, you get just to the point where you're really engaged, and then for some reason or another, for a multiple number of reasons, the novel doesn't finish. So like the first one, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, you're reading along, you get to a high point in a chapter, and then through a mistake in putting it together, all of the remaining tranches of pages are blank.
Wow.
So you go in pursuit of that novel and come up with, you're told, well, it's not really that novel, it's this one. So you take it home and it's not that, so you start reading that and it also doesn't finish.
And what I found interesting was you said it's all written in second person.
It's all written in second person.
Which is almost unheard of in a novel.
Right, so then the narrator is addressing you, the reader, and telling you your story. And the most fascinating thing to me, and I really want to figure out how to do this in theater, but I don't know if it's possible, that first novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, as you're reading it, it slowly dawns on you that you're not reading the novel, you're reading your thoughts as the reader of the novel.
That's terrifying.
It's really, this is phenomenally bizarre.
Fascinating. I hear stories like this and I wonder, how does somebody think up a thing like that in the first place?
It almost sounds like it is in the actual title, because the title sounds unfinished as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's reflecting the element of the book, but yeah.
Well,
who's our guest?
Our guest is Toussaint Morrison. And first of all, I didn't put it on the interview, but I'm really interested in your name. My kids have some unusual names because their father is from Ireland.
Okay.
And so I always think that's a fascinating subject.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, here is Toussaint's bio. Toussaint Morrison is an avid mentor for youth working as a paraprofessional in special ed classrooms and leading spoken word workshops primarily in middle schools. He is also an Emmy Award-winning host of PBS's civic engagement web series, America from Scratch. Graduating from the University of Minnesota with a degree in theater, Morrison now spends his time writing and producing film for majority casts of color. And
So I am thrilled to have Toussaint on. I have known Toussaint for 15 years now.
15 years,
I first met him when I hired him as an actor for my theater troupe, GTC Dramatic Dialogues, in 2004, I think. He acted with the troupe for a really long time, and then we use an interactive dialogue process that uses a moderator, and at some point boosted Toussaint up to moderator, and he's got quite the following out there at the schools we tour to. Toussaint is the person who maybe has given me the most white-knuckle moments over the 15 years I've known him. Apparently missed a flight to a school at some point that I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's good you can block that out with your memory.
It sounds like he remembers it.
No,
I remind him of it.
Reminded me.
I remind him of it. It was a white-knuckle moment for me.
I'm curious how you miss a flight.
So, yeah.
Oversleep. It's happened more than once. Toussaint's not the only one.
I had one of those old phones that kind of looks like a candy bar, and the alarm just didn't go off. But missing a flight, pretty big deal.
Yeah, it is. So what is our first beer, Michael?
Yeah, so Toussaint, we like to get started right off letting our writer read. So we're going to let you read one of your pieces. Mm-hmm. And for those who are just tuning in for the first time, the way this works, I pick beers that are specifically chosen to pair with the writer's words, just like I would pair beer to food.
Okay.
So I look for thematic elements or something that I can latch onto, just like a flavor.
Yeah.
The beer that I've chosen for this first story, The Fight That Never Was, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Is Miller High Life. This isn't just about craft beer, folks. This is about beer.
Yeah.
So I chose Miller High Life for these reasons. One, the story takes place on New Year's Eve, so you gotta have champagne. Champagne and beers.
Oh my goodness.
But it's a New Year's Eve that, as I read it, is taking place primarily in a dive bar in Northeast.
Yeah.
So what else would you drink?
How dare you call Whitey's a dive bar?
So let's taste this Miller High Life.
Yeah.
And then
Cheers. L'chaim.
And then we'll let you read. It's like champagne.
It's like bubbly water.
But very sweet bubbly water.
You know me and my opinion.
Yeah.
You found some beers I like.
I'll
stick with that today.
I am a huge fan of Miller High Life.
Yeah, I mean it's consistent.
It is.
It stands the test of time. I mean it's not.
That's the best I can say. It's consistent. It's like White Castle.
Yeah. Even White Castle isn't as consistent as Miller High Life. Want me to start reading it?
Yeah, go into it.
Okay.
Introduce the story to us. Tell us what you're going to read here.
Well, what I'm going to read is I have 3 different means of delivering stories to people, and one of them is by spoken word, the other is by song, and then the last is just by short story. And I write short stories and I put them up on ToussaintMorrison.blogspot.com, which isn't the sexiest URL to put them up on, but it's what I started out doing in 2010. And what I slowly started doing is translating these stories to podcasts called Reading with Toussaint. So you can read these short stories at ToussaintMorrison.blogspot.com. You can also hear them if you just type in Reading with Toussaint.
And you should spell the name.
Toussaint, which I really figured everybody already knew how to spell.
You would think so, but some people.
Yeah. So here is the first story of Books and Brews. The Fight That Never Was. I can thoroughly say that New Year's Eve, ringing in 2016, was one of the best I've had in some time. There are 2 routes you can go for the amateur of all amateur hours. Number 1, play it chill, go to the VFW, or stay at home with your boo thing, or work and make ducats. Either of these options plays into no part of the devil that is New Year's Eve. However, for me, New Year's Eve is New Year's Eve is one of my favorite holidays, and I opt for number 2. To patrol the dangerous demon for at least a few hours, whether you're mindful of exactly what you're getting into is another story entirely. At 9 p.m., the night started out at a jogger's pace with a stop at a best friend's house, then to an art gallery turned makeshift bar with balloons tacked to a ceiling for the midnight drop. 10 p.m., we promptly left, hitched a ride to a house of bad decisions and impulse. Having fully committed a week ago, I dressed to the nines and readied the crew for a VIP balcony soiree. The risk was it all turning into Bronanza Douchefest 2016, starring us. Alas, it did not. A 1:45, I could feel the liquor burning through the common sense of the ballroom we stood in. Drinks spilled, potential fights brewed, and I stood to have a better chance of finding our server on the back of a milk carton or TMZ video than actually in person. We needed to get the hell out of there, and fast. I called our ride, blitzkrieged the server to pay our tab, and we vacated the imploding ballroom by 1 a.m. Off to a Northeast bar where we knew the staff and some of the regulars. We leaned against the bar, 12 sheets to the wind, profusely shouting, "Happy New Year!" into the air when the feeling struck us. Unbeknownst, a bar stool away, 2 men held a conversation at the bar. The gentleman furthest from me sat draped in a black leather jacket, his wispy dark hair barely touching his shoulders. His frame sat fragile as a glass menagerie. In my drunken stupor, I recall his shoulders as meatless knobs, only badassing it by proxy of the leather jacket. The gentleman closest to me, holding dialogue with the other gentleman, sat at least 6 inches higher than the other. I couldn't tell if his back was actually muscle or just proportioned to the whole of his giant body. His shoulders, as far as I could tell, were bulging almost too big for his own frame and hoodie. And then I write here in italics, our lives are made up of flickering moments, simple flickering moments that somehow line up and make sense because one precedes the other. And sometimes these moments present themselves and then evaporate in obscurity in such a flurry and flash that we forget the entire timeline of a life always had a context. This particular moment flashed, flickered, and flew faster than one could have ever anticipated at such an hour. I turned to my friend James for a moment to talk about something I'll never remember due to drunkenness in the split seconds that preceded it. With my back turned to the two gentlemen, I hear, "The fuck you just say to me?" Turning to the two, the shout evidently came from the gentleman closest to me, the large gentleman, the gentleman now planting his fist repeatedly into the smaller gentleman's face. Side note, I've been attacked by dogs in my life. When it happens, you have little to no time to react. The flash of fangs are for sheer ceremony before a quick twitch of violence lunges towards you. I've seen this same quick twitch in a few Pride FC fights and one fight in particular at a party, but never in my adult life up close. The large gentleman arose with the urgency of a hurricane and began to punch the other man's face faster than a cocaine-addled Honda. In my drunken state, it appeared this man had gotten off 24 straight right jabs in less than 10 seconds. Before he could set off another barrage of hits, my mind said, Toussaint, we should help this poor smaller man, now being publicly executed by this larger gentleman. Right? I agreed with my mind, so I drunkenly stepped toward the punching assassin, and upon my last step, I crossed my left foot over my right leg to squeak through the crowded bar stools and tables and reached out my hands to effort breaking up the ass whooping. And just as I reach out with off-balance footing, the larger gentleman reaches his left arm back to deliver another blow. Perhaps his right arm blew so much lactic acid and oxygen that his body forced him to use his left arm to complete the ass whooping. His mind saw fit for the smaller gentleman. His elbow, at the peak of pulling back to then move forward and propel his fist into this poor man's skull, grazes my hands, which were reaching out to break up the fight. So off balance and so incapacitated with alcohol, my momentum was sharply shifted backward, and now I'm falling the opposite direction of the fight. Just the faint touch of the larger gentleman's pendulum blows sent me flying into a posse of bar stools, a waitress nicknamed Sharon Stone, and my best friend James. James and Sharon absorbed some of the fall as I pathetically collapsed into the stools. The fall was almost as feeble as the attempt to break up the fight. Seconds later, the bar staff removed the larger gentleman off the would-be corpse of the thinner man. I lay on the ground, still. James offered to help me up. I turned away his offer. I just wanted to take in the moment. Although I was proud of myself for stepping up for another human receiving assault like a freshly colonized strip of land, it was all overcast by a knee-jerk reaction to laugh aloud to myself. I'd like to rewind and reflect on the fall. This fall was a perfect fall. I mean, I effing hit those bar stools. That waitress nicknamed Sharon Stone and my best friend James with the precision of a well-timed tackle. It was like one of those falls where you hit the ground and shit just keeps falling around you. I physically impacted a 10-foot radius with that volley. Finally, accepting a hand to rise to my feet again, we laughed, drank more, and Ubered back to the crib. To answer your question, no, I don't speak in third person. I write in third person. And welcome to 2016, Toussaint Morrison. You're a brilliant idiot with a heart too big for both sleeves. Postscript. Sharon Stone, the waitress working that night, reported to me that the thinner man, the man who had received the ass whipping of a lifetime on New Year's Eve, he had entered the bar the next day with his girlfriend, who demanded an explanation as to what happened to her man. Apparently, he was so blackout drunk that, even upon exit and waking up to his wounds, he had forgotten how he got them. The bartender relayed the last night's events, and as they exited, a patron turned to Sharon and shared the sentiment that if anyone deserved that ass whooping from last night, it was that thin guy. He had it coming, they said. The universe always finds its balance, and even when you try to break it up, it will repel you to the floor, along with a dozen bar stools. Thank you.
Well done. I enjoy hearing it. It's a very different experience from reading it.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a slightly different version.
It might be, yeah.
From what's up on the blog spot. I read it multiple times.
Oh, absolutely.
I heard a few
Absolutely.
differences. And really neat story. One of the things I want to ask you, I think where we come from affects our writing. You're from New Orleans. You've spent a lot of time going back there. How do you think that's played into your writing?
I think New Orleans is kind of, if at all, into the subconscious and upbringing I've had. It's kind of played into the not really giving an F, like kind of being open. Like in New Orleans, you say what you feel, and it is what it is, and that's, you just tell it like it is.
So is that culture shock going back and forth to Minnesota Nice?
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of people who say Minnesota Nice is really very
Yeah, I mean,
aggressive.
yeah. I mean, even racially, there's definitely a culture shock as well, just because the way that blackness is perceived here, as opposed to New Orleans, even though the South has, a more overt and public record of outward racism. Here, it's different, and I think that even has to do with the writing as well, because here, my writing was the biggest impact that's ever had on my writing in this style was a writer named Matt Snyders. He was the youngest staff writer to be hired to the City Pages at the age of 23. He had just gotten back in town from Amsterdam, and he wrote a blog called the Lilac Chronicles, where he just told these crazy stories that he experienced in Amsterdam, tripping out on drugs in the red light district. Matt is who he is, and seeing him write, hearing like some of the stuff that he wrote, it then gave me permission to really tap into all of these other things. All of these other words and phrases that were stewing around with me. And I was like, actually, I can use those. And so
just out of curiosity, how old were you then when you were introduced to him?
Oh, geez, Matt was 23. I would say probably 25.
Okay, so you were
26,
relatively young when your writing was really...
As a writer, yeah. 25 is a baby as a writer. But yeah, that definitely influenced me, and I think unfortunately, I don't read a ton, but what I do read are usually, Bukowski or, strange books like, there's one book called Pimp by a guy named Iceberg Slim, 48 Laws of Power. Just a lot of different books where just the storytelling is just more. It's the storytelling is less filtered.
Okay, so do you tend more toward fiction, nonfiction? It sounds like you're talking about fiction. There's no storytelling.
Oh, not nonfiction.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so different kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
Our last guest was a professional storyteller, and that's what he does. And
oh, wow.
Many of his stories are true. So what I find interesting, what I found a little challenging about preparing an interview is you do so many things.
Yeah.
I can't focus on any one thing, and I'm sure my kids got their ADHD from me, so that should work well for me. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But I ended up thinking a little bit about my own life, because I kind of do the same thing. I do music, and when I say music, I mean I play half a dozen instruments, I teach a dozen, I write music, I play music, and I write books, and I write poetry, and everybody asks me, how do you do it all? And looking at what you do, you're doing music, you're doing poetry, how do you find the time to do it all?
Well, it's not necessarily finding the time, it's just allotting the energy. I think Michael can speak to this as well. You only have, when you don't work a 9 to 5, you only have so much energy in the day that you can choose to allot with what you want to allot with it. And if I choose to write a song or finish a song, in the early days, I was absolutely just horrendous with my energy and time. I just, I'll spend 4 hours writing this one verse, and that sometimes that's time well spent. But if you do that for several days in a row, now you got a month of, you trying to finish a verse and it's just not happening. So could you have bailed on that and gone to something else? And so for me, it comes down to not planning my time, because if I plan my time, then I won't get to anything. But it comes down to prioritizing, making a list of what I want to get done throughout the week, and then I get to that, and I usually get to all of it by Wednesday or Tuesday, and then I have extra time to deal with other stuff. So there's that, and another thing is I just don't try not to let the bullshit get in the way, like emails or like people texting and calling. Like I think.
So you turn off the phone.
I don't turn it off. I adamantly try to practice saying no, because a lot of people are, well, hey, can you do this and that and a third? And it's like, back in the day, I'd be like, let me appease that.
I work for myself. I can do anything. I can be anywhere.
And everybody assumes that, you're working for yourself, so you're always available.
Yeah, I run into that.
Which they don't understand the reality of that. And
that you're actually working.
Yeah. And even if I'm driving and thinking of something, for me, that's kind of work too. It's like, I want to sit at a coffee shop and like somebody will see me there and be like, hey, Toussaint. And I'll be like, hey,
Right.
Trying to get to some things here. Like, can you like...
I read a funny quote once, except it's serious. It was to the effect of being a writer is the only career where you can take a nap and legitimately claim your work.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that, I just lie down in bed and think.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how this greater discipline that you've developed compares to your writing process when I first met you, because I know you used to carry around a notebook, a like raggedy old notebook.
Still do.
All the time.
Still do.
I couldn't figure out what the hell was in it, because it was like you would have the start of a poem on this page, and then somewhere over here you'd have something else, and it was all scattered throughout.
I mean, for me, that started where I started writing in notebooks, and then the composition of them kind of came about themselves, where I started basically writing words at the beginning of the book, and then they would like a set of words in the first few pages, and words that rhymed with words, and then I started taking up like what's the margin on the side? What is that called? It's just the margin on the side.
I call it the margin.
I started taking the margin at the top, and then like kind of a makeshift margin at the bottom, and just started writing ideas there, and then left the center for the actual piece. And so for me, there was a method to it all, and it worked out. And then at a certain time, it looks like, you're decoding like alien text at some point, and that's what Michael was speaking
and
to.
yet miracles come out of it.
They do, yeah.
We are ready to go on to beer number 2. What do you have for us, Michael?
So beer number 2 is paired to a spoken word piece, because one of the things Toussaint does is spoken word. Called Escaping Ninas. And the beer that I chose for this is from Pipeworks Brewing Company in Chicago. It's called Ninja versus Unicorn. Double India Pale Ale. I chose this for a number of reasons. One is the name, Ninja versus Unicorn. I know from the past that Toussaint is fond of doing air karate, let's call it.
Air karate. Please title this episode that.
There is a kind of ninja-ness there, plus the ninja being kind of on the down low but fierce.
Yes.
Versus the unicorn, which you'll hear who the unicorn is.
There's a unicorn in this one.
Plus, it's a double IPA, so it's just sort of brash and aggressive. And
is this a hazy double IPA?
No, it is a little bit hazy, but it's not a New England style IPA.
Okay.
It's just a straight up like 10% alcohol, I think, something like that. Super strong double IPA. 8%. That was 8%. It's not that strong. This is all right. Let's taste this.
Cheers. I like how for you say 8% isn't that strong. Like the regular goer is like, oh, I don't know.
Hey, I work with a wine somm a lot, and she'll say things like, "It's 8%. You can drink it all day long." And I'll turn around and say, "Ooh, in the beer world, 8%. We're getting up there."
Yeah, exactly.
So, Escaping Ninas.
All right. Escaping Nina's coffee shop for a brief writer's break to eat for the first time of the day. On my way back to my vehicle, I turned the corner to a scenario that has already occurred twice this week. And now for the third time in the lapse of 7 days, I've walked this same street to run into no one other than Garrison Keillor. Which makes it now the third time I've watched him step out of his shitty, dilapidated, poop-colored Volvo, muster an arthritic geriatric strut to the sidewalk like the pimp of St. Paul, and as we cross paths, he gives a split-second's glance to peer over his skyscraping, jagged shoulder, a fleeting look of disapproval, bestowing a sliver of his immaculately important attention as if to say, yeah. Young writer, please. I've slow dance syndications, written multisyllabic rhythms. Yeah. I've mistakenly carved poetry finer than your most well-thought-out configuration of creative literature. Yeah. My right brain is larger than that of your alma mater's English department, whilst my left would slap the psyche of a small school of business. I'm not to be fucked with, young writer. You take the alley next time you see me on these streets. The sidewalk belongs to me, motherfucker. And in that same exact moment, within the following split second, I return a similar glance, one of repressed deep emotion, curving a question mark with the potential of feigning great and furious anger. I give him a look that says, "It is I, Toussaint Morrison." I don't know why it's in an English accent, but it sounds more official this way. and I will not take any alley upon arrival of you, your shite-colored car, or your shabby royalty. I do not see your name writ upon this sidewalk. I am known to far less than your name entertains, but I am not entertained. I give approximately negative 39 fucks for the likes of you, and although you do not know who I am, you soon will. I am the undocumented offspring of Charles Bukowski, the seed from the loins of Malcolm X. I am the illegitimate adopted son from the brief gay marriage of Balfi and Shane Hawley, a child of chaos, mistress of militants, close kin to confrontation, student from the school of Dr. Strange, nephew to the pending race riot, infant of destruction, defiler of passive aggression, and hypothetical son of Luke Cage. I am a lesser-known force, but an force nonetheless. I, too, swing the pen, old white man, and will walk any street I see fit for walking despite your glare. Like a cop, condescending and entitled, despite you move like gentrification, slow and evil. And like that, our trance breaks. Our paths cross, and a fleeting moment, gone. He continues into a city that embraces his every word. I walk to my equally shitty and dilapidated Honda Civic to grab a sandwich from the glove compartment and eat, fueling myself to continue to write for the day and embrace the city with my every word.
All right, so I love this poem. I love this poem. So
why do you love it, Michael?
Partly it's like history between you and me. So
yeah.
During the first, say, 4 years of being on the road with you,
yeah,
you constantly created cognitive dissonance for me. Because, I would build an impression of you in my head.
Yeah.
And then you would say something, and it'd be like,
What?
And one of those moments, we were between Minneapolis and Menominee, headed back home from some show somewhere, and we're listening to NPR, and you said something effective, "Oh, it's time for Prairie Home Companion." And that was a what moment? And you went on how big a fan you were of Prairie Home Companion.
Yeah.
Which at the time was like, this does not gel with what I believe Toussaint to be.
Well, then I have to ask, because your site is called Urban Home Companion.
Yeah. And
I'm assuming that you kind of took it from Prairie Home Companion as
what I did back in, I think, 2006 or 2005, I actually did an Urban Home Companion show at a place called Tony's. No, is that a joint called the Steak Knife? Yeah, that's what it was. It's now Tony's Diner on campus. Ooh, this beer. But it was called the Steak Knife. Gathered up some friends, and we did the same thing as Prairie Home Companion. I just wrote in these skits and scenes, and everybody had their scripts, and we were reading from it, and somebody did sound effects and whatnot, and we told several different stories. One where there was a hypothetical, a fictional keg race between Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and St. Cloud. And somehow Iowa wasn't able to show up because they had gotten blackout drunk. And so when we were telling the story, somebody was there was basically we were telling the story about the keg race. And for some reason, Iowa was not able to show up. However, we did interview one of their teammates on the bus, and then somebody started doing they played the Iowa guys and then somebody translates for them. I was drinking on the bus from Iowa. Then it got dark, very dark. And so we just did these stories, and there was one where a guy woke up. He woke up on the McAllister campus, and they started talking about fake diversity versus real diversity. And so I did that kind of modeled after Prairie Home Companion. That was the only time I ever tried to do that. But outside of that, I just love the idea of Urban Home Companion being this something somebody could listen to from a different place. So Prairie Home Companion, let's be realistic, it's speaking to white people over the ages of 35 or 40. Urban Home Companion was okay, can we, angle to a different audience? And that's kind of how that started. So, yeah.
So, given what I said, that you used to at least love Prairie Home Companion.
No, I do. I do.
What's your beef with Garrison?
Oh, which has kind of gotten unfortunate. I shouldn't say unfortunate, but he kind of shot himself in the kneecap. But I actually ran into him several times throughout that summer, and the feeling, the stories, I think, I don't necessarily have like, I guess I don't know how to put it. I know that in the small hip hop community in Minnesota, you know, word travels fast, and the same thing with the film community, and a lot of people that I had spoken to that had worked with Garrison, I mean, obviously in general, not in hip hop, but not a lot of people, you know, had good things to say about him. And I did great work. You know, it speaks for itself. It you know, reached all the people it did for its own reasons and successes. However, the person putting that out, and the cautionary tale here for me was, just don't be a prick.
Right.
And I know that as some artists, like, we get trapped in our own heads, and we come off as pricks. I mean, I remember there's that one composer, was it Beethoven or Mozart? Like, people be like, "Hey man, can I get a word with you?" And be like, "Ah, don't talk to me." You know, like, he was just always in his head. And I'm sure there's a way to go about that and still get the work done. And I don't know if that was Garrison's case, but when I ran into Garrison, it just was this absolute, just the stare was so fucking menacing. Like, you can never get away with that in other neighborhoods I'm from. Like, only on Selby and Western, like, just like, and he had this Volvo that it looked like it was going to die and just like surf the ground, like at any point, like the wheels were going to come off like a Looney Tunes episode. But that was he's a very polarizing and enigmatic character, and so yeah.
I'm curious. You know, you referenced Beethoven or Mozart always being in their head, but it sounds like in this case, it's not that he's so in his head that he just can't connect to people, but more of an equal.
It could be. I've heard many different presumptions, and explanations. Okay. The end result is, it's not a pleasant experience.
Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that you kind of take it to, let's all learn a lesson from that and think about how we treat other people.
Oh, yeah. And not that he needs to treat me like nicely or anything. It's just like, if I pass by you, I have only so much opportunity to be nice to you or to be an asshole to you. And if within that, like, very brief moment, we're just passing by each other.
It's
and it's also
just as easy to be nice.
Yeah, it is. And this also relates to New Orleans as well. When I come back from New Orleans, it's weird because people start looking at me funny because I'm looking at them, and I say, and I'm just like, "How you doing?" You know, like, that's all it is. In New Orleans, that's just, you know, "How's your day?" You know, and it's authentic. They're waiting for an answer. You don't have to give one. It is what it is. So, but here in Minnesota, it seems like, you know, it's almost as if Garrison Keillor is kind of like the Night King of, you know, if I make like a Game of Thrones reference, to Minnesota, and that it's just so cold and like brittle, and the shell is so evident. But you know, it is what it is.
Just a funny side note, my family actually comes, one side of them from Freeport, which people think is sort of his fictional Lake Wobegon. And some of my relatives actually own the place that Charlie's Cafe is based on.
Oh.
Or is it the Chatterbox Cafe in the Prairie Home Companion?
Okay.
And I think it's actually called Charlie's. Anyway, you compare yourself to other authors and escaping Ninas. So who are some of your influences? Bukowski you've mentioned?
Yeah, Bukowski,
and
definitely.
Why are they your influences?
You know, because Bukowski, I mean, he had some great pieces about just the mundane, turning the mundane into very, very highlight like paramount points of the day. And he just was very good at doing that. And I always appreciated that about him. And this is a very mundane activity. I'm walking to my car to get a sandwich from the glove compartment.
And I think I see that as I read more and more of your blog posts, that you pick out these moments.
Just small moments, yeah.
In time, but you tend to draw a lesson from them, don't you? Most of the ones I've read.
Yeah, try to. Sometimes it's just, sometimes the lesson could be like, that happened, you know, and it doesn't, we don't need to give any more meaning to it than that.
Right, and sometimes that's true.
Yeah.
And that's the wisdom of it. Yeah.
I mean, and I think Bukowski kind of let you find the wisdom wherever you wanted to find it, really. So for me, sometimes I can't find the wisdom at the end of writing something, so I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out later on. And then at the end of it, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
And you know, sometimes sometimes you don't need that either. I read your story about nearly hitting, I want to say a moose, but it was actually a big buck.
Oh yeah,
right?
huge. Yeah.
And I don't know if there was any wisdom in that, but I got a laugh out of that because I was thinking of, I actually wrote a blog piece about Bruce and the moose. We call our GPS Bruce. And it led us into a herd of moose. It was supposed to take us to the Grand Canyon and the nice hotel.
And moose aren't nice either. People got it twisted.
Well, night was coming on, and it had taken us a long time to get down this rutted road, and my then 17-year-old son was driving very carefully, and all of a sudden we're surrounded by these elk, moose, whatever they were, and my kids very helpfully said, they can rock a car and tip it over if they really want to.
Oh, yeah.
I said, Matthew, get out of the driver's seat. We will be out of here in 3 minutes.
Wow.
I don't care what it does to the bottom of my car, which is maybe why I just had another car.
There you go, yeah.
But also, your writing does have this similar kind of jagged edges and not, I want to say coarseness, but not coarseness, like a roughness.
Yeah, there's a rough texture to it, and again, that comes back to, it's almost speaking to the reader as if you both kind of understand the joke, and it's instead of telling, it's just kind of like winking at the reader and then saying, okay, let's move on, because back before Matt Snyder's, like before that, I used to just write these long, drawn out, explanatory, like just pieces where it was like, I would assume at all times you just didn't get what I was talking about, so I have to now tell you a story within a story within a story. But
one of the writers in my critique group says that trust the audience to be intelligent, and that's exactly what you're saying.
And that's big with film as well. So yeah.
Do you have beer number 3 for us?
Yes, I do. So this next beer is paired to a song, because songwriting is another thing. Yeah. I used to joke because Toussaint was in like 10 bands at once. So this song is Baby Got's Venom. This was a harder one for me to pair, because I said I watched the video for this song about a bajillion times to kind of get my head around what I was both reading and hearing.
Yeah.
And I came away with less of a concrete interpretation and more just a feeling about what I was getting. And for me, the voice in the song is in a dark place.
Oh yeah.
A very dark place. And so the beer that I chose is The Abyss.
This is great.
Deschutes Brewing. So I was looking for...
Holy crap, this smells like caramel macchiato with booze.
Yeah. I was looking for the biggest, darkest beer I could find.
Oh, God.
And then the title, Abyss. How could you not go with that? And then, this is not just Abyss. This is barrel-aged tequila barrel Abyss.
Dear God.
So you've got the tequila for a little extra shot of self-medication.
Yeah, exactly. When you say darkness, I think of tequila as well. Yeah.
Nothing good ever came from tequila. Tequila is like the Long Island iced tea of straight booze.
Christ, I remember junior year in college.
So taste this beer. What do you think?
Yeah, it's roasty. It's like almost like a, not coffee, but is that malty or what is that, caramel or?
Oh wow, there is lots of caramel. There's lots of roast, dark licorice, like black licorice.
Yeah, almost black licorice.
And tequila. I hate tequila. But
I'm so sorry to hear.
In a beer, and everybody asks me, "Did you have a bad experience?" Because everybody said, "It's like no, because I don't drink it."
Yeah. And it also has an effect on people that I read this research where why tequila, when people drink tequila, they want to like play tennis, whereas other whiskeys there's not as much activity, but there's something in it that really is energizing.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder if I drank tequila if I could play tennis.
I don't know.
There you go.
Try it. I think this is the best of the 3.
You like the malty beers. You like
I think I'm seeing a pattern. I'm seeing a pattern.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a pattern.
Did you drink beers before this podcast?
There are many ironies to my life. Like I got kicked out of organ lessons, and now I teach music lessons, and I hate beer, and now I'm doing
podcasts.
I introduced her to a few that she likes.
I think you find one I like almost every program.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you're finding 1 out of 3. So I would not have expected that, but I do like this.
Yeah, now you can find out what you like with Michael's choices.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Baby Got Venom.
All right, I won't sing this to the full volume. I'll explain afterwards. Packed up the bottle, burned another down. It's time to see if my luck is any better in the next town. Scorned my lover, I wouldn't let her in. I got these walls that I built long ago, and they're thick. I'm an exit, moments flow through me. Nobody's tool except my heart when it's pulling. I tried to cut it out once, but I couldn't find a blade sharp enough to cut through the walls I already made. There's no trouble in the discomfort of the act. It's the comfort in not letting you love me back. The fear of giving you a world you no longer want. A world that celebrates the light as much as the dark. My past sits with me, most mornings at the breakfast table, next to an empty chair that sits next to Banquo, that sits next to the idea you can only dream careful when sit next to your worst fears and people you won't let go. I don't know who I am. Can't expect you to know better. But if you can, hold my hand while I'm out there trying to get there. When in doubt, don't try to figure me out. My past will make your mama run for the hills. Trust when the gravity hits you, I'll be right there to lift you. I can take fire without giving in. So long to that stranger you knew. Silent to the new night. So long to your red, white, and blue. So long to the good fight. Finish the bottle, let another burn. Right now I'm good. I'll figure out my luck in the next world. My lover's gone. The scorn was too much for her to understand. Scorn goes hand in hand with love. And I'm no yoga in the park. I'll take your ideals out for a good swing dance in the dark. You see, light's an illusion. She's deadly and gorgeous. Now I only take direction from the local blind swordsman. If blood can coexist with the poison in my veins, then there's no wall that can't be given a door frame. I keep it locked, not to keep you out. Mama told me not to let a viper in the house. Baby got venom. I'm still her huckleberry. It's the vanity that makes the samurai wary. The jagged parts of my life are the only parts that I got, and they've made good for building a city around the heart. You want to be right and get what you want. You want a sure thing and a pleasant surprise. I can't promise it all, but I give you good love. And a full heart, cause you the Triforce of my eye. When in doubt, don't try to figure me out. My past will make your daddy grab his pistol. Trust when the gravity hits you, I'll be right there to lift you. I can take fire without giving in. So long to that stranger you knew. Salam to the new night. So long to your red, white, and blue. Salam to the good fight. There you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I will say, watch the video to this because it really, it's an earworm.
Yeah.
I can't get it out of my head. Of course, I watched it a million times, but I can't get it out of my head. And it's got this lovely little kind of
Plus you've got the
happy guitar
one
line
behind it. Right. I was going to make the same comment. Keep
Yeah.
So I want to know, obviously I had like 5 million questions here and we're not going to get to even half of them.
No, it's okay.
But as I listen to your different styles, your different creative endeavors, do you have a preference for spoken word versus the essays versus lyrics?
Well, right now, like, I'm in a pretty tough relationship with the lyrics because I haven't done a music show in about 2 years, like a proper music show in about 2 years. And so for me, there's a certain muscle of mine that just is, I mean, there was 7 years where I just toured the country with a band, and like, you know what it's like when you can step on stage, you know, every single lyric, all the beats, everything. And that's kind of all gone. And so I have a distant relationship with that right now, which I will pick up in the fall.
That was going to be my question.
And then,
start up again.
Yeah. But for spoken word right now, I'm just getting into the flow of spoken word right now. And I have a show Saturday, June 22nd at the Phoenix Theater, where I'll be doing a full hour of spoken word and then maybe some songs as well. And then I'll be releasing a chapbook. So spoken word artists, what they do is they tour around and they have a chapbook. So it's easy to print off. It has all your stuff in it. You can write stuff in it and you sell it. And I remember buying them back when I was doing the National Poetry Slam in 2004, 3, 4, and 5. So it'll be my first chapbook release since starting. Yeah, thanks. 15 years, finally getting it out there.
Well, you've done a little bit, a few other things in between. So
It's just
taking so long.
exactly. And so
Most people wouldn't be so generous.
yeah, so it to answer your question shortly, it depends on where I'm at in the process of writing. Right now, I'm in the process of writing spoken word.
So do you find that you sort of focus on one thing, then go to another, as opposed to spend a week doing 5-6 different things?
Well, right now I'm doing 5-6 different things right now. I'm writing songs, writing spoken word pieces, and then I'm finishing up episodes for a web series that I'm finishing filming.
That's another thing we haven't gotten to.
No, it's okay.
Lonnie the Landlord series.
Lonnie the Landlord,
He's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Do you find that some of these... Well, I loved his comment, I'm 33 and I've got 2 kids. Or is it 3?
3.
I think I had 8 kids when I was 33.
Lonnie's in a different place.
Poor Lonnie is stressed out. I'm like, by the time you have 8, it's like, oh well, have another glass of wine, who cares?
Yeah.
Do you find that some forms are better suited to some messages? Like if you have a certain message you want to say, is it best in one form rather than another?
Yeah,
what would an example be?
Some songs are song is too concise and limited. Spoken word, definitely you can fill somebody in on the total story of something with spoken word. With short stories, I'd even say those are limited because they're just reading. And everybody wants to just read.
One of the things I found going from novels to poetry is you've got a lot of room in a novel, but I'm finding there are things that are better said in a poem. They're just better concise. They zero in on a certain emotion.
Yeah, you definitely get a different angle and perception of what the story is from a poem. And even spoken word piece, you can get a different mood and temperament that you may not get from a novel.
Right.
Let me ask you about your spoken word. Often when you hear spoken word like slam poetry, it's got a particular cadence.
Yeah.
And you hear enough slam poetry and that cadence becomes really annoying.
Yeah.
Your spoken word does not have that cadence. I have not heard anything you've done have that cadence.
That's because I grew up in slam poetry. Where I first saw my first poetry slam in '99, and I was 18 at the time, about to graduate high school. And Bao Fee was performing at Kieran's Irish Pub, and he has a cadence to himself where he's just kind of talking as well. But then he can sometimes go into that real slow, held out constant, like the atypical slam poetry thing. So he would go over, he would cross the line and come back. And then when you go to a National Poetry Slam and everybody talks like that, it gets annoying as hell. And so for me, I just I wanted to be aware that is happening, because then it turns into a means of inauthentically presenting something that's supposed to be really important and authentic. Yeah.
It gives it a kind of exaggerated, fake importance.
Right.
Yeah, it's like soap operas.
Do you compete in National Poetry Slams?
I used to. I want to get back into it maybe next year, because right now they're in the...
And how do you find it that you are doing something different from everybody else? Does that give you an edge, or does it put you at a disadvantage?
In the slam poetry community, it could be a disadvantage because they want to hear a certain thing and they sometimes don't vibe with what is coming from outside of the bubble. Slam poetry is a very bubbled community as well, and they're cool people. Hip hop and slam poetry in Minneapolis have been tough to kind of navigate and come to terms with. Film, everybody's wide open. You want to hang out, you want to do something. It's great. It's the way I've experienced hip hop in New York and in other communities as well. So for slam poetry, that can sometimes rub them the wrong way if a different style is coming from the outside.
I could keep talking to you forever.
Yeah.
We try and keep this to somewhere around an hour.
Yeah.
So, do you want to give us your links?
So you've got all kinds of stuff out there. You've got the movie Black. You've got web series. You've got music videos. You've got your podcast. So
to keep it concise,
tell us what do you want people to?
Where I want people to go right now are one of two places. One is youtube.com/Toussaint Morrison or youtube.com/Urban Home Cinema. And so I'm creating. And the main place to go is patreon.com/Toussaint Morrison. So my Patreon is going to revamp it a little bit. Right now it's there just to serve the episodic short films and web series that I've been making, and getting people in to join on it. And for $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever it may be, to support the films and help me get some of these films into film festivals, help me just be able to film them. And then also, they get these pretty awesome rewards, kickbacks, when the films come out. But the cinema thing is something I've been really invested in. And then I film myself just kind of like talking about my process at youtube.com/Toussaint Morrison. And so you get a lot of behind the scenes stuff there and hearsay on my process there. So yeah.
Double consciousness, is that still a thing?
Double consciousness is definitely still a thing. And if you podcast called Double Consciousness, you can look it up. Also, if you just Spotify my name, Toussaint Morrison, you'll get all of my music. It's all 5, 6, 7 albums. So there you are.
And Michael, where can we find you?
You can find me at aperfectpint.net.
And I am at bluebellschronicles.com. I'm all over the place too, and Vosica is not a very common name, although I understand there is one other Laura Vosica, which kind of was an identity crisis to me, but anyway.
There can only be one. You got to find her. You got to take her out.
Only.
Yeah.
You can find us.
What were we saying about it's so easy to be nice? But in this case,
I immediately thought of Highlander. We were talking about Scotland earlier. There can only be one. I don't know.
Right. So I'm at bluebellschronicles.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm now on Instagram. You've created a monster.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You can find us at booksandbrews.net or on Instagram. We are on Instagram now at Book and Brew. Book and Brews.
Yeah, book
it's
singular
book
and
brews.
That tells you where the priorities are,
because,
doesn't it?
All different variations of Books and Brews are already taken.
Yeah.
So, Book and Brews on Instagram. We're also on Facebook.
Just the letter N. Yes, you can find us all over too.
Who do we have next month?
Well, let me think. Let me turn all these pages and get to my notes. Coming next month, I hope I am saying her name correctly. Catherine Kaiser is the author of 2 books of poetry, Dark Lake and Pretend the World. And she edited the anthology Riding Shotgun, Women Write About Their Mothers. She's received fellowships and residencies from Banfield Locke Center for the Arts, the Minnesota State Arts Board, and many other things. Mm-hmm. And so she will be coming to us next month with her poetry.
Awesome. Looking forward to that.
Can't wait.
This has been episode 2 of Books and Brews. Tune in next month when we do it again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Toussaint.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Later.